You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
What's up, Coaches Nation? Excited to see you again for another week. We have something super special and unique for you today. We are launching an additional type of podcast for the Coach's Journey. So we are excited to get your feedback and your comments and your questions. I'm Dr. Sheri Fluellen and our co-host Faisal Ensaun. And so today, instead of our typical format, which is either we're interviewing another coach and their journey and gleaning some nuggets from it, providing you guys encouragement and the challenges along the journey, or some of the other episodes we've done are where we unpack a topic, and whether it be like sales or things like that that are really important to the life and the journey of a coach as well. But sometimes there's lots of these little questions that maybe don't need an entire hour to unpack, but they are so important. And there's also nuances to those questions that you may have in your coaching journey that's just a little bit different and makes you question things or feel like you have a little bit different of a problem or a challenge or a barrier than maybe somebody else that has a little bit different circumstances. So we are starting this new type of podcast that we'll do about once a month or so. And it's going to be just a question and answer. This is an opportunity for you as a coach, no matter what kind of coach you are, no matter where you are on your journey, no matter what the question is, you can send us this question and we will answer it. We will work on answering it. We'll look at a big picture, help you think through how to think about the problem, how to problem solve your own problem. But then we'll talk maybe a little bit more detailed, like how do you, what would we do if we were in that situation? And I kind of, bounce some different ideas off. And this will be fun because Faisal is going to have different ideas than I do, which is perfect because a lot of times there is not just one clear cut black and white solution to a problem. That's why we're coaches. If there was a black and white solution to every problem, probably coaches would not be needed. So the fact that we exist and there is an expanding market for us indicates that there are nuances and challenges to so many questions. So we want this to be a forum to be able to bring those questions up, to be able to talk about them, wrestle with them, and have fun with them. So we are excited about this. And I know because Faisal loves having an opinion on everything.
Not everything, just most things.
Which is totally good because his opinions are always really, really good to hear and always come from a place of thoughtfulness and wisdom. So I'm excited to see his answers and his thoughts on these. All right. So before we jump into that, though, we are going to talk about our wins that we always do on every episode. And guys, I want to highlight why we do wins, because this is something that can provide value to you in your coaching journey with your clients, is having them talk about wins at the beginning of a session. And just because Faisal took a drink, Faisal, why do you think wins at the beginning of a session are so powerful?
Yeah, and I think it's probably one of the more powerful aspects of like getting people to start their day, start their sessions, just because most people are not in that mode. So one of two questions I always ask, well, what are you excited about? Or share some wins. And sometimes I'll ask both of them. And if they can't answer either one of them, I'll ask them, what do you feel grateful for in your life? Even if it's the smallest thing, like I won't let it go. And I've had some very tough conversation where somebody's going through a rough time, and I get it. But I also understand that our brain, the way it works is that we'll focus on all the negative things. And most people have trained themselves to do that. It's one of the most amazing things. And one thing I've realized now when my clients show up in my group sessions, especially, but all of them, they're already thinking about the win before they jump on. They're like, absolutely. I was thinking about this on the way here. I was thinking, so now they're training themselves to do that.
Yes. That is so cool. And full disclosure, in the shower this morning, I was thinking about what are my wins? What am I going to share in the podcast today? See, it totally works. Totally agree. I, in all the years that I spent as a psychologist, people don't come to a psychologist because everything is going right in their life. They come to a psychologist because everything is going wrong. And one of the patterns that I noticed is the whole session would be just negative, which, I get, because again, people don't go to mental health because everything's going right. Now, as coaches, some of us do actually get to work with people that are doing amazing things, that feel amazing, that have an amazing life, and there's not a lot of negative stuff. Negative, I'll do air quotes around that. But at the same time, we can get stuck on, there's a book that talks about this. I think we've talked about it, but we can get stuck on the gap, not the gain. We can get stuck on all the things that we feel like we're not achieving yet, and not be able to recognize and celebrate the things that are going right and the things that are bringing joy and happiness and all of the stuff in life. So I love that we start our podcast out with wins. So Faisal, share a win with us.
Yeah, and I was, and just like you, I was thinking about, and I generally, when I wake up, and one of the things that I've helped, I actually learned this from Dr. Wayne Dyer, is just wake up with gratitude. And also from Brene Brown is that this, and one of my clients who talks about it, he says perpetual gratitude, is that when you start to look at things in that way, there's rarely that the problems kind of grab a hold onto you. So, I mean, just today was one of those days that, like, I wake up every day, but I actually really felt it more than anything else. And I just woke up. Thank you was the first thing that was on my mind. And just the little things, like right now it's summer in Canada, Ontario region, like we have a huge backyard, but there's a garden in there and you can smell every different kind of flowers, see them. There's an apple tree, but I didn't even know that apple trees had flowers coming in first. They're white flowers, which is really cool. And I can, it's just, everything is so incredible. And just walking around the backyard for 5-10 minutes, I did my meditation there too. That's what matters at the end of the day. And when I actually look at my life overall, it's pretty amazing, but I have challenges. I have personal challenges, I have professional challenges, and they're okay, they're fine. There are things that I don't want to deal with right now. There are things that I like, the challenges that I like, but at the end of the day, just when I look at what we have built, my wife and I, it's an incredible life, and there's a lot to be grateful for. There's a lot to win. So the win is that, like, these little things that we have in our life that we take for granted, I think that's what makes up our life. And I actually felt it today a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I miss apple trees. I grew up on about 4 acres in the country, and we had apple trees, and we would can apples and make apple pie, and my mom would make applesauce, and we had large gardens, and so we always had tons of different fruits and vegetables. And I aspire to give my kids those memories. My gardens have not done so well as an adult, so but that's awesome. I can just picture those white flowers on the tree because they're beautiful, and you're gonna be able to enjoy some apples this year. It sounds like.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
What about you?
So when your kids are
what's been a win for you?
So I will choose something that is really horrific and use it as an example of finding kind of the flip side of it, or the gratitude in life. And so I think I'm trying to remember if it was last Friday or if it was Monday, but we my husband and I got notified. So we have a number of rentals, real estate. We got notified by the police in the middle of the night that they found one of our tenants in one of our properties dead of a gunshot wound. And it was assumed to be a suicide. And that's still questionable, unfortunately, at this point. There's some question. But it's been a rough week. My property manager, the gal that manages and knows all the tenants, she kind of identifies herself as an empath. And she has been very emotionally just rocked this week because we had to deal with the coroner, we had to deal with his family coming and getting all of his stuff out of the apartment. And it's been a lot. And so, but my gratitude in that is, just reflecting on my life and the people in my sphere. I'm grateful to have a community. I'm grateful for people that I can talk to if I'm struggling. I can cry on their shoulder. I can laugh with, that care about me, and I'm not saying anything about his community or anything, but it just makes me appreciate and value the relationships and the people that I'm around. So that's tragedy that I'm, able to use in my own life as just a remembrance of how blessed and how much gratitude I have towards relationships.
Yeah, and then I'm sorry to hear about that. That must be really tough to deal with for anybody. That's tough, and I love the fact that you're able to see. I mean, I think these are the moments that makes us actually appreciate life, because no matter how many plans and visions and goals we have, at the end of the day, there is no guarantee. You could go tomorrow, you could go the next hour, all sorts of things can happen. As tough as human beings are, we're incredibly also, paradoxically, we're also fragile in so many ways, and there are so many uncertainties. So, and that's why I think the power of gratitude is that we see what we have right now.
Yeah.
Not what we could potentially have at some point. We also have a mind that can think about that. But if we lose sight of what we have, then everything becomes about the future and nothing becomes about what we've built already.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an opportunity for me to show love and care to my operations manager. She's showing love and care to the people that were rocked in that situation, not my direct responsibility. And so I get to, care for her. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, all right. On that note, let's recognize our sponsor for this podcast, the Coaching Mastery Community. It is a virtual community of amazing coaches where we come together every week to talk about the issues that are impacting us, to grow and learn with each other. We're learning how to do business, the business of coaching better. We're learning how to be a coach better. We're learning how to be better, how to be more mindful, how to be more present ourselves personally so that we can show up more professionally, all of that stuff, because all of those things we believe are the pieces of the pie to be able to really have the impact we want as a coach. What do you want to add to that, Faisal?
I mean, today, just this morning, I had a session where one of the new coaches that we have in the community, he coached me, and I gave him some feedback, and I was thinking about it. And the feedback was, it's one of those feedbacks that you will never get outside because most people will be very uncomfortable doing it. So he's Brazilian, and I think he's Brazilian. He speaks Portuguese as his primary language, and I come from a different culture too. And like, he was a great coach. He was challenging me. He was doing all sorts of stuff. But there was one thing, whenever he spoke, he would, and I know a little bit about Portuguese, how they speak, and I've heard enough to know that he was using Portuguese language as a basis to speak in English. So his sentences would go much faster. And I would miss half the stuff that he was, not half, like a few of the things. And I really had to focus to understand what he was saying. There was nothing wrong with his English per se, but he was, and it's very normal for us to use it. Now, I was just thinking about it. Most people would be too uncomfortable to give him feedback like that. I was uncomfortable too, but I was like, this is going to help him, because if he's connecting with clients and they're putting extra effort and trying to understand him and they can't make sense of some of the things that he's saying, that's going to hurt his business and his skill sets. And as soon as I give him his feedback, he's like, oh yeah, I'm aware of that. I need to get a coach around my pronunciation, all that stuff. I'm like, your English is great. It's just that the speed at which that you speak, I miss words in there. And like, just that one feedback could completely change how he approaches his coaching sessions. Yeah. And that could be the one thing nobody gives him feedback, and he does coaching for years and he can't seem to get to like what's off about his coaching practice.
Yeah. Well, I love that you gave that feedback, and I love that you gave that as an example, because one of the things I'm seeing in the world is this oversensitivity to perceived slights on other people, on culture, on people's culture. And so I could see there being a lot of anxiety around, telling somebody something about, about their native language or the way that they're coming across due to their culture or their, whatever. But it's that cultural piece that it's not a judgment. It's not like right or wrong. We're just being, observational and sharing what we're noticing and providing an opportunity for somebody to adjust to the client that they have in front of them. So thank you for having the bravery to address something like that other people would be like, oh, do I say anything? Am I going to offend them? That sort of thing.
Well, yeah, and you're right. That matters in the coaching world, what kind of cultural context we're in. And I think what matters even more is like, where is the intention coming from? Because we all know that people will give feedback, not from a place of serving, not from a place of thinking. So the intention, people pick up on intention very fast.
Yeah.
But let's say they don't pick up on that. There are a lot of ways to, for example, I didn't just go directly to that. I noticed a lot of amazing things in his coaching process, and I gave him that feedback first. And second, first, that I can empathize with that because I came from a different culture. But even if I didn't come from a different culture, I could share that, hey, if I'm noticing this, your other clients might be noticing it too, and they might not say anything. And he will understand that I'm saying it from a place of well-intentioned. So there are ways to do this, and we need to develop better tools for communication versus just stop talking about these things, which makes no sense to me.
Absolutely. So did you give them the feedback sandwich? Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah, but except I know it's in the corporate world, it's a good thing, but the problem with that is that people expect the negative.
Oh, true.
And they're like, here it comes. But I hope it didn't come across that, because obviously the point of this is for us to grow. I'm not his boss to fire him or hire him. I know that I've gotten a lot of feedback from my clients around that. It's like, I know exactly what my boss is doing, and I'm waiting for the negative feedback to come in.
Yeah. I prefer to think of the feedback sandwich as more like an Oreo, because to me, the middle is like, that's the best part. So in a feedback sandwich, the constructive, that's the part where we grow. That's the part where we get to, flourish, because we get to hear about our blind spots. But
yeah, well, and so that's why I said intention matters here. And most, when we think about feedback sandwich in workplace, they will probably make up a bunch of positive things, and it doesn't come from a place of authenticity. And the main thing is to go towards that middle part. And it's probably usually not even a feedback for them to improve. It's usually some judgment call or something around there. But if you do that right, the feedback design with the right intention, with authenticity, with care, with empathy, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. All right. So we are going to jump into the questions now. We've got 5 questions that are common questions that coaches think at some point, and I will bet that you will recognize some of these questions in your own mind at some point in your coaching journey, either that have happened already or that you are going to encounter. And again, we want you guys to ask your questions. Get as specific as you want, and like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with this client. I don't know what to do when they said this or in this situation. Doesn't matter. Go ahead and ask us. You can put it in the comments of this YouTube video if you're watching YouTube, or send us a message if you're listening to the podcast. If you put it in YouTube, I would suggest that you change some of the details. If you're giving details on a client, change it enough to where it is not recognizable, so we can maintain confidentiality for our clients. All right, question 1. How do I find my first clients? So critically important, especially if you're a newer coach. How do I find my clients? Where are they? How do I find them? How would you answer that question, Faisal?
So I think that might be a trick question. There's so many ways to find clients that we'll run out of time to answer that. A better question might be, who can help me find my first clients?
Ooh, who, not how.
Who Not How. And that's a great book for anybody to read, because this is even the way we framed the question, I think this is how how is like a stuck thing that we have, because we all know that if we jump into something, we figure it out. Our mind is like hardwired to come up with solutions. Yeah. Now, what stops us from finding clients? Well, we set up blocks for ourselves. So one of those blocks is we don't even talk about what we do. So we won't share what we do, and we expect that clients would find us. So one of those ways might be is that you start to promote yourself, no matter how uncomfortable that feels like.
So I totally have found myself doing this, and I think I still do it. I have to notice it. And so what I'll do is I love doing Facebook Lives. It scared the crap out of me when I first started doing them, because it's whole like, well, what if I screw up? What if a booger comes out of my nose? I mean, like all the stupid stuff you think about. What if I stumble, on my words, whatever. So I forced myself to do it, and I love doing them now. Absolutely love doing them now. And so, but what I've noticed is that I would give maybe like a 5 or 10 minute Facebook Live on a topic, a coaching topic that people could apply to their lives. And then I'd be like, all right, guys, see you next time, out, and then I'm like, I never even said I was a coach. I didn't give them any way to get in contact with me. I never said, hey, if this resonates with you, I could help you through this. Like, I actually never did what's in the marketing world is a CTA, call to action. There was none of that. Yeah. So just another awareness, like if you actually are kind of putting yourself out there, make sure that you follow through on the whole thing. Otherwise, you're missing opportunities to get your first client.
It sounds so simple, right? But these are the like I would do a bunch of posts the whole week when I was starting out, and I wouldn't once mention, just like you, I wouldn't once mention that, hey, go here, click on the link. What I would tell, the stories I would tell, so, well, no, people won't like that, so I'll share it once a month or once a week or I would not share it for months sometimes, because the problem was my own perception. It had nothing to do with how other people respond. Now, when I'm posting something, in every post there's a CTA, go to my website. Every post I don't feel bad about that, but in the past I had all these weird objections around, well, I'm promoting something, I'm selling something, I'm doing this. Yes, you are. That's the whole point. Right. And you won't be able to help anybody if you don't promote it. So that call to action of sending people somewhere, whether it's a website, a landing page, or a questionnaire, or wherever it is, people need to know that you're doing something. So that's generally, and that needs to be consistent. But then another, I think what's even more powerful when we talk about who can help you find clients, when you become a coach, more than likely you didn't just, you weren't just born and you became a coach. It wasn't right
probably not.
or right out of high school. I haven't met, the youngest coach I've met is somebody who has gone out of college, or they've had a little bit of life experience. But most coaches have done quite a bit in their life. They've had experiences, they've met people, they have established rapport, they have relationships. But what they wouldn't do, and just like I didn't do that, they wouldn't go up to people and say, hey, do you have anybody that needs these services? Yeah. That would be okay with getting on a call. Would you recommend me? Yeah. And all they have to do is just think about it for a bit. And if you establish some kind of relation, but then they care about you building your business. And if they don't understand it at all, do a session with them. Yeah. Or provide free coaching for them, or bonus coaching for them, or a very low cost coaching. So they give you not only testimonials, but they promote you. In fact, the first few clients that I got was just family and friends that I coached, and they ended up giving me testimonial, and they referred me to a bunch of other people because they got a lot out of it. Yeah. That might be a very simple way. Or reach out to colleagues. Like it's not that complicated. You reach out to people, ask them for help. Yeah. Hey, do you have any recommendations? If they don't understand, get on a call and explain what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest thing is, make people aware of what you do, and be willing to hang with them long enough for them to understand what you do. I've heard coaches go both ways on this, as far as like, we'll do free sessions, do some of that. And then the other's like, no, people must pay for your time, have boundaries, respect yourself. I think there's a middle ground. I think you can have boundaries and respect yourself. And at the same time, if nobody knows you or has experienced what you have to offer, you don't have any testimonials, you don't have anything, that you can demonstrate competence with, maybe, do some free stuff for a little bit to kind of build the momentum and build the awareness. But yeah, let people know. And then, as Faisal said, find the gatekeepers of your ideal clients. What communities are they in? What organizations are they in? And talk with a gatekeeper, talk with the person that maybe can give you access to them, so that you kind of have a platform in that way.
Yeah, and we're just giving a very generalized perspective here, but there are a lot of coaches I know that who come out of like 30 years of corporate career.
Yeah.
And when they will start the coaching business, and they're not doing anything to go towards those connections that they have built for 30 years. Now, I didn't have that experience. I only worked in my field for 2 years, and I could have still reached out to a bunch of people, but I didn't initially. But what I found out is, in people who have a lot of experience, they've built a lot of connections, they've served a lot of people in those industries, they haven't actually gone back and reached out to their connections in those organizations to see whether or not they could do a free training or a free coaching where they can offer something. So a lot of coaches come with incredible background and connections and experience that they can leverage to very quickly get clients out of it, but they don't, because this hesitation of what would they perceive me as, I'm starting something new, I'm starting something small, what if they reject me, like all these things for human beings, they show up. It doesn't matter if you're a coach or not. Acknowledging that, but understanding that you come with those experiences and connections, you can leverage all of that.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, question number 2. I've had a particularly emotional week, and I'm not sure that I can be my best. What do I do? And so I think the bigger question in this is, the things that we go through in life impact us. Like, sometimes it's really hard to segregate or to compartmentalize your life, home life versus work life versus all these things, and in some respects, the boundaries or segregation around the different pieces of our life may be somewhat artificially created. But at what point is your own stress, your own challenges going to impact a client enough to where you don't feel like you're able to deliver at the level that you are obligated, that you have obligated yourself to deliver? This is a really big question, because there's obviously a lot of subjectivity around this answer. So looking at a big picture, Faisal, kind of how would you start to think through this process?
Well, Sheri, you modeled that very well in the beginning of this conversation. You've had an emotional week with the death of a tenant, and you shared that. I could see your emotions around it, but you were direct about it. You shared it. And that actually developed, I felt a connection with you because you're human, and I could empathize. I could see that that's difficult. I think the problem is that we live in a world where we're taught to cover up things that might be difficult because we don't know how to handle those conversations. Yeah. I mean, think about it. Like when you go to a funeral, when you have somebody's going through a hard time, we're trying to figure out, like, what am I going to say to this guy? You can't say anything that will help them, to be honest, but you can be there.
They probably won't remember what you said, but they will remember they will remember you were there.
Yeah. And so again, we're dealing with a cultural block here. Otherwise, it's very human to share. And I dealt with that initially. Like, how the hell do I do this? I mean, there was this one session I still remember this. It was like 2.5 years ago or so. Right before, and I don't like interacting sometimes at the time we were going through a hard time, my wife and we had a really big fight right before a session, like 15 minutes before a session. And I was so thrown off, and I almost said, I'm like, I got to cancel this session because I don't know how I'm going to show up.
Right.
But I did kind of, I mean, obviously this is our responsibility as a coach. You've committed to somebody. If you can, you will show up. And there are times where you don't need to show up. The client will understand if it's hard enough. If you're going through an illness, or a family member is going through that, or something else. And again, these are all subjective things. How you process emotions will be very different than me. So you get to decide when you can show up and when you don't. But let's go to the part where you've committed to show up and you want to show up. In that case, with my client, I spent about 5 minutes meditating. But I also know that this affected me a lot. And my energy was going to show up. So as the session started, the client actually picked up my energy faster than I could even share. Within the first 5 minutes, as I was talking a little bit, I didn't outright say anything. And he's like, he stopped me in the middle. He's like, something is off, or is everything okay? And I was like, oh shit. He's like, yeah, you're probably picking up my energy around that. I had a difficult time with my wife. We had a fight before this, and that just affected me negatively. I am here though. I'm human. I have challenges. And he made a joke about it too. He's like, okay, maybe you can help me with this. I'll help you with your wife. I'm like, yes, deal. But so this happened within the first, I think, 10 minutes. Now I went back and listened to that call. Up until that moment, the call was completely off. Like the energy was completely off. That I could tell the client's tonality was thinking something, like something was off. But it's like the elephant in the room that is not addressed. And as soon as he asked me that question, right after that, like the call just went up. Yeah. In the sense that like we acknowledge what was off and we can move forward. And that's
I love that. Thing. Yeah, I think what you brought up, that we're human, right? That's an obvious statement. I'm not a robot, No. At the same time, there's and this is what I experience. I'm human. At the same time, I want to show up my best, or relatively my best in the moment, to my client. They deserve the best. They're paying for me to be at my best. And there's the risk of, there's a risk that if I share with my client, we'll use your example. I just had an argument with my husband. I'm still a little bit emotionally reeling from that. If I share that, then these are some of the thoughts I'm thinking that can run through my mind. If I share that with my client, are they, they're going to think less of me, or, they're going to try to fix my problem, or, I think there's a lot of different things. And I think you just addressed that perspective that they're going to think less of me. We're human, everybody has struggles. But one of the things that I will intentionally do with clients, where I have shared a little bit, like, hey, I'm a little off today, or I'm struggling, I've had a really stressful week or whatever, is just to let them know that I'm okay, that I have resilience, I've got a community, this isn't, that, so they don't feel like, oh my gosh, now the roles switch, and now they feel like they have to take care of me, because that's, and this is part of my perspective and ethics around, as a coach, I'm here for them. And yes, we have a human relationship, but they're not paying me for them to take care of me. And I want them to know that I have the resources, and, and this is just a momentary blip on the screen. But it's a blip that we all experience. And I think in that way, it's also modeling for them boundaries around appropriate roles. I think it's also modeling for them the importance of knowing that you have resources, that this isn't just a suck it up and pretend it didn't happen, but yeah, I'm gonna have to process through this, and I'm working on being present in the moment. But I've got these, I've got something that I have in place to kind of help me get through this, or I have my own coach, whatever it might be. But for me, that's the biggest awareness, is how is my client going to respond? And are they going to feel like they now have to assume responsibility for my care, which I don't I don't want them to have that burden. Like as a human, they're going to feel compassion and that sort of thing. But I don't know, that's kind of one of the intentionalities that I have around sharing those sorts of things. I don't know what your thoughts are on that,
Oh,
Faisal.
I love that. I didn't even think of that because I think you bring a valid point in there, is that we all feel a sense of responsibility to other people we've connected with them, and we're like, oh, is this person okay? And I love that you, this is also an opportunity to share that it doesn't matter who we are, we're gonna go through a hard time. So do we have the things in place, such as our family, community, our support system, whether it's a coach, whether it's our family, whether it's a community, or a combination of those, and practices that help us kind of move through these. So it's an opportunity to share, hey, I'm going to be taking care of this, and this is how I'm going to do it. So that kind of models that too. And also another thing, a profound thing that you mentioned in there, is that our client, like for one thing, and this will, like, I think, make every coach's life so much easier, because there's this we've been taught this idea that you need to pretend to be superhuman. Like, and we do that in every part of our life, like especially in the social media world, as, oh, look at me, I did this, I did that, I built this life. And we know that as human beings, everybody's got shit. Like, I don't care how great your life is, you have got shit to deal with right now. That's part of the human experience. We've been told to kind of shove that under the rug. And in some ways it's humorous as well, because we know that everybody does it to some degree. So the biggest thing that I've learned is to not be the fixer of problems. I'm not there to fix anybody's problems. I'm there to explore, and I'm there to help clients connect to their own potential, to their own wisdom. And I'm there as a support to help them move through that and develop better ways of thinking. I will share some tools, I'll share some ideas that I might know a little bit more than them, but most of it will come from their own wisdom. And that means that they need to know not to put me on a pedestal. No matter how, and people will do it, by the way. Human beings, this is a very natural thing for human beings, will put you on a pedestal, and you will need to consciously bring yourself down from that pedestal. And that's a hard thing to do, because it's very satisfying to your ego.
Absolutely. So kind of my final thoughts on this is, one, you really got to, as coaches, we've got to understand how we deal with emotions. You know, I've been trained over the years to be able to compartmentalize pretty well, you know, and that if something like I got in an argument with my husband, typically I'm able to like bring myself to a place where I can set that on the back burner, be present and focus on what the client says, and then I'll pick up with it afterwards. Now, there might be an energy shift that I can't really control much. So it still might be important for me to acknowledge that. But there have been times where I'm just thinking back, when I owned a mental health practice, there was a time where one of my best therapists, who's told, she like, you know, waltzes into my office and she's like, yeah, I'm quitting. What? And then I had a client, you know, and so I think thinking through like, how intense did the thing happen? How much did it rock you? I mean, if I found out somebody that I was super close with died, you can be sure I would cancel all sessions. Like, that is not something that I can just, you know, set on the back burner. So, you know, how urgent is whatever it is that's going on in your life? How urgent is it? Do you need to make decisions now? How emotionally impactful was it? Like, these are all things that you need to think through. And then based on your own processing on, you know, who you are, how you deal with things, you kind of have to come to a decision for yourself on when do I push through? When do I continue to meet with clients and acknowledge and be present? And it's not going to impact me at a level that I'm no longer happy with my ability to deliver, versus, you know, when am I just like, nope, not even going to try, like I can't.
You shared something key there. So as human beings, we have the ability to put a pause on all sorts of things. For example, human beings have the ability to fast for long periods of time. They can put a pause on eating, which is one of the most essential. It's painful not to eat. but we can put a pause on it. Emotions are no different. You can acknowledge it. It's important to acknowledge it, but you have to understand the purpose of that conversation. Is it time for you to process it, or is it time for you to show up? Because you can put a pause on it for a few minutes and go back to it and process it if you have to. But like you said, you need to determine where are you and be honest with yourself that if you have just gone through a death in the family, you probably don't need to show up if you need to process that. And clients will understand that, or something else that's happened around that. But if it's something that's hard, you're going through it, you're in the middle of processing it, you can acknowledging it and put a cap on it. But the key is that you're going back to it. And this is where emotional intelligence comes in. This is where the ability to process emotions comes in. If as a coach, we don't know how to do that, one, you don't know how to challenge your clients in this area. Two, you will need to do that because most of your sessions, even from your clients, you will hear things that are emotional. You will hear things that they don't know how to deal with. You will not be able to help them. And most of human experience is emotional in nature, positive or negative. And so this ability is not an option. And also I remembered another thing. I'm going through the book, The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown. Incredible book. I think it's one of those must-read books by coaches to understand that these are all human things. Being vulnerable, showing up is actually the precondition for courage. It's the precondition for creativity, for connection. That actually helps you develop connection with your client. But it doesn't mean that you dump a bunch of stuff, like you said, and start processing that within you might have a moment where you break down, but you can share that I have my support. I'm here to serve you. Let's move forward. And the client will understand. We're all humans. We get it.
Yeah. And if your client doesn't understand, one is maybe you've set up your relationship with your client in a way that is unhealthy, or has expectations around performance that maybe aren't ideal, but it just kind of might give you a little think about, or maybe it's not your ideal client, which leads us into the next question. When can I fire a client?
I fired a client.
So yes. So when can you? And so these questions come up when you're working with a client and a variety of things come up. Maybe they have a personality, and this is typically where I hit a wall, is especially when I was in the position of diagnosing. When I would be working with a person that has one of a couple personality disorders, like I wouldn't necessarily know that on the front end. I work with them for a while, and I'm like banging my head every time I get done with the session with them. I'm like, I am like so frustrated. Like I can't get anywhere. They're argumentative. They're, whatever. And so there have been a couple clients in my life where I'm like, how do I fire them? Like, can I, should I? What does that look like? All right. So you're working with a client, something isn't gelling. It could be for a number of reasons. How do we evaluate that situation so that we can make an appropriate decision?
I think there's a question even before that. A lot of the whole firing thing can be avoided because the question here is alignment. And this is something that I've taken to heart. And I think every human being, every coach needs to understand this. You're not everyone's cup of tea, and not everybody's your cup of tea.
What do you mean? Not everybody loves me and just thinks the world of me?
I know we don't want to conceive that there are people who are not going to like us, who are going to dread us, who are not going to want to be all that stuff. But that's one of those cold, hard facts, is that you're not going to feel aligned with a lot of people in life. That's very clear. So the way to deal with the problem is actually before that problem comes up. Is the qualifying period for your clients are important, and I didn't do that very well in the beginning. Part of it is because I didn't have a lot of experience in it, but part of it is that I didn't feel like I was in a position to be able to qualify clients, because I was like, well, I've never done this. Why should I qualify clients? But that's not about, and there are two reasons why you should be qualifying from the beginning. One, if you don't have the right client, more than likely, you're not going to be able to help them create results, because there is no rapport, there is no connection, there is no openness, there is no room for them to open up for you to even challenge them. So you're going to have a very, very hard time trying to get them to open up, and you will hear phrases like, I don't know, like I'll have to think about that, or then they will be lukewarm and stuff on all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Those are alignment issues. So doing a lot on the qualification end, which means getting them to fill out the questionnaire, really think about, so if I hear a bunch of stuff around not taking responsibility for their life, I'm taking a note of that. And I'll still be open a lot of times, unless it's really like somebody doesn't write a couple of words in the questionnaire and don't even take the time to fill it out. If they're writing a bunch of stuff that are red flags, such as not taking responsibility for their own actions, their own who they are, and always blaming others and thinking that the whole world is out there to get them, I will bring that up in the session. I'll ask them. I want to know their thinking process around it. I'll want to understand their values.
My favorite is when I would get a spouse, come fix my husband, come fix my wife.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. That's probably one of those relationships that it's
well,
hard.
everybody
It's
thinks
hard for
everybody
us.
around them needs to be fixed.
Right? I'm the same one. My entire family is crazy. Really? Is that statistically likely?
So, and this, I mean, and it's actually very hard sometimes for coaches. It might be very hard for coaches to conceive. It was for me, because I grew up, and when I grew up, I was the black sheep in the family. So first of all, I thought I was crazy. And then over time, as that got too painful, I started thinking my family's crazy. But neither of those binary answers were true. It's just that I didn't know how to express myself. They didn't know how to support me in the way that I needed it. And so there was a challenge there. So coaches might not quite pick that up if they haven't dealt with this part. But it's very important to understand that human beings, the reason why we point and blame, and you as a psychologist, you're aware of that, is that there's a buildup of energy, the painful energy that we don't know what to do with. So we'll point, because that creates a release of energy. Yeah. We'll blame other things around us instead of owning it, because it's actually painful to own it. And then that's where not everybody has it.
Yeah. And what's ironic is that when we get to a place where we feel overwhelmed and we try to blame other people, we're actually giving away our power. We are externalizing the situation, which means if we externalize it, we have less control, which brings hopelessness. So there's this cycle that happens when we don't recognize the control and the capacity that we have to make changes. It just spirals out of control. Yeah. So you're bringing up, Faisal, that basically before we even deal with the when can I fire my client, it behooves us. And I think that's the first time I've used that word on this podcast. So I'm excited.
What does that mean? I've never heard of that.
Go look it up, behoof. And it has not have to do with cows.
That's what I think.
It behooves us to, okay. That's awesome. Yeah.
I'll guess that word within the context.
Yeah. To examine, how did we let this person in to our coaching world to begin with? But so there's that question. What I think is important is, I would say, before you make the decision, do I fire this person or not, is really examine, and this is where having a coach is really important, or having a community where you can have these conversations with other coaches, which is why, part of the reasons why the coaching mastery community is so powerful, because when you have that client that you feel stuck with, that you feel like I can't make progress, I can't serve them, they are annoying the crap out of me, and I just, I totally don't look forward to my sessions with them. There's an opportunity there to reflect on why. And maybe it was that you let them in and you shouldn't have, because maybe they were not your ideal client. There were, some red flags about their appropriateness as a coaching client. But maybe you got your own work to do. Maybe there's something about their personality that reminds you of your dad and the things that you don't like about him, or maybe there are some behaviors that they're doing that are poking you in a way where, in places that you're feeling emotionally raw. So it may not be that there's anything wrong with the client. It may be that you've got some work to do, and you could use this as an opportunity to self-examine and grow yourself. So if you have that feeling of, in the therapy world, we call this, and I just lost the word.
Behoof? Because I'm still trying to guess that word.
No, but that helped me remind me of the word for whatever reason, So it's called transference and countertransference. So transference is when we have an emotional reaction to somebody, we're reacting to that person because of our own stuff. So an example would be, if something about the way Faisal looked reminds me of my brother, let's say, and I'm irritated at my brother right now. And so when I talk with Faisal, I get a little bit feisty with him and I get a little snarky because
so that's why you were feisty with me.
That's right. That is transference. Countertransference then is if Faisal is then responding to my transference and then coming back at me, being even more snarky or, being passive aggressive or whatever. And now I'm irritated at Faisal because he's being passive aggressive to me. And now I label him as a bad client because he is just uncoachable. Really what's happening, I kind of started it because I was treating him in a way that I probably wasn't even aware of. Which then is causing him to respond to me in a way that he wouldn't normally. This whole like whirlwind of stuff. Like it can go downhill pretty quickly. So having that awareness of what's going on inside of us and that whole process is really important. So before you fire a client, these are the things that I think is really important to have conversations about with a client. I've done a lot of clinical supervision in the mental health field over the years, and these are a lot of the topics that we talk about. People's reactions to clients, because sometimes it's you, not them, just like you were saying, sometimes, we blame everybody else. This might be one of those scenarios too, where everybody else is wrong. Your client is saying that. Well, how about you saying that about your client? They're wrong. Yeah. Maybe you're the one that needs.
I also learned a way to remember the profound topics that you brought up. So Behoof transference and the Behoof countertransference. I will never forget this.
Yes. Yes.
I love what you brought up, and this actually clarifies something very powerfully. So when I'm looking at my clients to qualify them for my coaching process, it's not, and this is where we're going to make all sorts of mistakes. I bet every human being, including Sheri and myself, will do this in these transference stuff, even right now, without being aware of it. And awareness is one of those lifelong journey that you're on, that there are things you'll be completely like blindsided by. This is why it's important to have coaches, therapists, support, whoever you need that will help you work through this, or you're working through it yourself. But the important thing is that we're not qualifying clients that don't poke us. Like we're not finding ideal clients that are not going to trigger us or poke us and do all sorts of things. That's not my qualification. In fact, a lot of times when the clients that are most interesting to me are clients who are very different from me. In their thinking process, and they actually help me grow much more internally. The thing that I look for is, are they coachable? Mm-hmm. Or do they have the ability to take responsibility? That's why I said that when you're going through a questionnaire, you might see some red flags, but then you need to bring that up. Yeah. When you challenge them, do they go towards outside? Oh, all this stuff is going on, I have no control over my life. Or, oh yeah, I can move towards that. Those are important qualification areas for clients, because they need to be able to take action, own responsibility, or be open to it and move forward through that. And those are it's more around their life than how they're showing up. So for example, if some of my values are that for I'm in a marriage where I'm committed to my wife, but there are clients I have who have open relationships. That has nothing to do with me. That I want to understand what's happening and what their values around that, but I want to support them to the best of my ability to help them figure out their life, because I don't know enough about their life. They know about their life, no matter how much they tell me. But the qualification in that case is, are they open to growth? Are they open to supporting each other? Are they open to doing a lot of things? And these are very important areas, which means, like, as Dr. Sheri pointed out, we got to work on our stuff. The less we work on our stuff, the less effective we are as coaches, because we'll keep bringing up our shit into the session, for the lack of a better word, like Behoof. I will not forget this word. But more importantly, there are points where I've realized that I do need to fire clients, and I've had a couple of incidents around that. One client, and this is why I'm a little bit edgy. I actually I still do this, where I would have a contract with a client. They have a specific skill set that they can help me with, and I'll help them with my skill set. So there's like barter thing going on. I stay away from that as much as I can. I still do it once in a while if I really trust this person, but I've done that in the past. And I've gone around it by just, if somebody wants to help me in that way, I will pay them and they can pay me. That deals with a lot of this stuff. But let's say I was in this relationship with it was long ago. It was like 4 years ago, with this sales trainer. He was incredible. Like, he was amazing. I've seen him in action, and I really wanted to learn, because at the time I was struggling in my sales process, and I hesitantly took him on because there were some red flags in there. I ignored them. I didn't ignore them. I was aware of them in the hope that, okay, it wouldn't affect. And I set some initial boundary stuff that you will show up on time. You will take me as a normal client, and I will do the same thing. And so we went through a few initial sessions where I showed up, I did the work. He showed up a couple of times, and then all of a sudden it dropped off. He will start canceling sessions. And that happened a few times, but not only canceling sessions, he wouldn't just show up to the session. Like, we would schedule a session, he wouldn't show up. And then finally it came to a point where, and I liked the guy, like, as a human being, he was great, but he would overextend himself. So I had to, and by the way, that came out of the community. I brought this up to a coaching master community within one of our discussions, like, how do I deal with this? Because I didn't know. And then within conversations, I heard a lot of amazing points from other coaches who dealt with this. Like, well, be upfront about it. Say, like, and I sent them an email, and I told them that, hey, these are the things that I'm noticing. I think my time is valuable. I really want to work with you, and I think you have amazing skill sets. But if you're not going to show up, then there's no point. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of your time. What are your thoughts about it? Can we improve on this? And then right after that, he sends me an email, like, you're right completely. I really need to own this part. And he sent a long email, and he committed to, like, okay, we're going to do the session at this time. The other time wasn't working out. We set up the time. 2 days later, he doesn't show up there either. Like, that was more hurtful to me, because I really actually wanted to continue. He was a great guy too. And I just sent an email like, this kind of ends our relationship. This ends our relationship at this point.
I think you did a great job with being assertive, letting somebody know, hey, these are the things I'm seeing. You know, I don't, it's not okay for either of us. I don't know what to do with this. What do you think? What are, some solutions? So it's still a collaborative coaching relationship where you're, it's really, the way you presented it really is no different than any other coaching issue. You like, I'm noticing this pattern with you. Let me share it with you. Let's have a conversation on how you want to deal with this. Just like, any other coaching conversation. But this one can be a little bit more sticky, because it's a little bit more personal than, pointing out they have this relationship pattern with a spouse or, a family member or whatever. But I think it sounds like you handled it beautifully, and then you gave him the opportunity, and it became very clear, I think, to both of you, yeah, this isn't going to work. And so you fired him. So you ended it. But I'll bet it preserved the integrity of the relationship, in that it's not, you can't control how somebody else is going to respond. You can't control how somebody else is going to feel, but as best as you could, you had integrity in being honest and being upfront in providing an opportunity. You communicated with him, and he kind of made his decision. So I think that sounds like a great way to kind of handle things.
And I do want to highlight that if I dealt with that separately, and I didn't know any other coaches, any other influencers, any other people who had experience with this, I probably wouldn't have handled it as well. because like I mentioned, I had to come back and talk to within our community to other coaches. And I remember bringing this up to other coaches that I knew at the time and asking, like, how have you dealt with it? Yeah. How have you approached this problem? What are your thoughts about this? And it helped me understand. And I put it up on the platform as well that I was a part of at that time. And as I did that, it helped clarify, okay, maybe, because a lot of times we question ourselves, like, am I giving him enough chances? And I really didn't want this relationship. So I had a bias in there too. I didn't want this relationship to end, but I knew that I need to respect my own time. And on top of that, I knew that he was doing that to quite a few other people at the time, because if he was doing it with me, he was overextending himself. I had seen him show up late to appointments and all sorts of stuff. That was happening other places too. The only differentiation that I want to create is that there's a difference between a professional relationship and a personal relationship. Now, even though I gave him that, I also understand as a human being that there are times where people get overextended. They don't know how to make sense of that. And that's why that was more hurtful to me, because I could actually help him in that area. And I told him, if you want to continue forward, I'd love to continue with you, but we would have to make a different arrangement. Yeah. And I also highlighted that, hey, I still think you're an amazing guy. Like, I'd love to continue our conversations. He never did, but I made sure to let him know that my relationship with him as a human being is different from my professional relationship. And this is where a lot of times when we're working with friends or family, you need to make that differentiation between your personal relationship, if you're doing that, and professional relationship. Yeah. That this is we need to have clear boundaries around the professional relationship. But that doesn't mean that I start to paint you with a white brush, or because you couldn't show up in the professional relationship, you're just a horrible human being.
Yeah. Kind of like when my husband says to me, "Are you coaching me right now?" Yes, I am now in the professional role of coach. No, I was kidding.
You should have like this, literally a hat.
Right, right. Okay, this is my personal mug. This is my coaching mug. Like, what am I drinking today?
The funny thing would be is, as soon as you pick up this mug, the spouse walks away.
I know, right?
I'm done with this conversation.
All right, we are running out of time and we still have 2 questions left. So we're going to hit them with lightning speed, 5 minutes or less. Can we do this, Faisal? I think we can. All right, so the next question is, how many clients a week is too many?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's a good problem to have if you have too many clients.
That is a good problem to have. Let's celebrate that if you are asking
definitely.
that question. Yes.
If you've come to a point where you have too many clients, every coach will at some point. If you've stayed long enough, you will come to a point where, like, too many calls I'm getting into. I don't have enough time for preparation. I don't have enough time. And understanding there's an ethical piece here is that, and this I actually learned from Brendan Burchard and really hit me. It's like, if you're not showing up with the same level of commitment, presence, and energy for your first session in the day as you are for the last session, then there's an ethical challenge here. That means you're not fully showing up for that client.
Yeah.
At that point, your focus has become how to make more money without the service. And we all know, we've run across doctors and all sorts of other professionals who do that. We just want you in and out. And at some point you're like, are they really helping me, or are they just increasing their business in that process? The focus, and that's where you have to decide where your integrity is, where your congruency is. That's important. The other thing is that and you will come to a point, it will catch you off guard. Like, I got to a point multiple times in the past couple of years where I had too many clients coming in and I had to block out time for so many things and I couldn't catch up. So I had to make tweaks to my processes, how I'm going to prepare. So I had to get better at that process. I had to make them faster, but also still be there, committed, and be able to send resources and other things that I do. So the important thing is understanding nobody can make that decision for you. Your life, your business is your thing, and you have to actually look at it from bigger. Can I handle these? Can I still be committed? Can I still support this client? Or am I going to fall off? I'm not going to prepare. I'm just going to show up randomly in those sessions. Now, once in a while it'll happen, but what I'm talking about is consistency in how you're showing up for your clients. And one of the bigger decisions I've had to make this year is actually transition out of doing weekly sessions. And I have only 2 of my clients left that I'm doing weekly coaching with on a one-on-one basis. And one of the biggest reasons for that is I don't have the bandwidth anymore. I don't have the bandwidth to show up every week and be able to support the clients fully. And I wouldn't be in an integrity if I kept telling myself that I can. So most of my clients, and also it all feels more aligned with my lifestyle too, is that, and my business path is that I want to focus more on events and facilitation, not on one-on-one. So I've moved most of my clients are on a monthly basis, one-on-one, and a good portion of them are on bi-weekly. And by the end of the year, I'm probably going to have a very few handful selected one-on-one clients, not more than 5 or 6. And then there will be either monthly or bi-weekly. But I had to make those difficult decisions based on my lifestyle, based on my business plan, based on whether or not I can show up for my clients. There are a lot of factors to take into account. And if we're not honest,
lot of factors.
Yeah, if we're not honest, and I've worked with other coaches who have like 20 clients going on and they're like jumping from one call to the other. Now think about the energy that you have when you're rushing, when you're like, you don't know what's going on, you've lost sight of the notes, your energy is off. You're probably not serving the client in the best way that you could.
Right. And you spent all 5 minutes talking. No. So let me summarize what you guys are hearing.
You said we could do it. I never said we could do that.
I have 1 minute. So let me summarize what Faisal is saying. There are so many factors that, can you say I can only, 12 clients a week and I feel emotionally tapped, 25. I know people that meet 25, 30 clients a week. I think that's crazy. But they're not me and I'm not them. So these are the things to think about. As Faisal said, what is your energy like when you're meeting with the clients? Because there's a couple different things to think about. Maybe you can have the same number of clients, but you're getting burnt out on the process around the clients. Maybe you're getting hung up on giving notes back, or you're doing other things. You're sending things during the week, whatever. Like maybe your process around the coaching is the problem, and that is holding you back. But you're literally being present with the client in the session. You could do more of those. So then work on figuring out the process, or hire somebody to help with kind of the background stuff so that you can do more of your time with the coaching. And if you're finding that your energy is not there consistently and you're struggling with that, and you have the good fortune of having more clients coming in that want to work with you, Faisal has shared with you guys a lot of great ways of being able to problem solve that. So maybe it's not about how many clients that you're working with. Maybe it's around the delivery of it. Maybe you want to shift now to doing more groups. So it's not really the number of clients, but maybe it's the number of hours, the kinds of things that you're doing. Maybe doing a group actually is more energizing for you, and meeting with clients individually, you notice you're getting a little bit more drained. Well, great. So maybe do more groups, less individual. Like all of these things are personal things that we need to be aware of and make some decisions on. And also why it's so important to be with a community of coaches, because you can talk about these things. If you're at the point where I have 22 individual coaching sessions a week and I'm feeling exhausted, tired, a little resentful because I'm not spending as much time with my kids as I would like. Perfect. Let's brainstorm that. Let's figure out what you can do that matches your lifestyle and your goals more. So those are all the things to think about. Love it. Last question.
Wait, but before you go forward, I know we went over, but I need to share this. So the part, like you shared it at the end, that one of the signs you have too many clients, one is that you need to start scaling, and naturally that scaling goes towards training and coaching at a group level. And that's actually the reason why I'm able to do one-on-one coaching once a month, because most of the coaching that my clients get is twice a month on a group level. And I can bring all of them into one area. But thinking about scaling becomes important if you want to grow your business. And that's a key area. That means whether you need to develop your facilitation skills, you need to hire somebody to set up your system, or whatever it is, that needs to be one of the thinking process around. You're either scaling, or you're reducing your clients, or you're raising your rates much higher. And this is something I learned on the marketing end, is that, and I did that, I doubled my rate for my group coaching, for example, and I lost only 3 clients out of 15 clients that I had last year. That's a huge difference. I doubled my rates and I only lost 3 clients in the process.
Yeah.
And that's
But
actually
think about income. He doubled his income, so minus, maybe what's 3 out of 20%. He lost 20% of his clients, but doubled his income, or doubled minus than the 20. Like, okay, math. He still came out ahead. So. Great. And and it's these kind of problem solving that is where you get ideas when you're talking with other coaches. All right, I got to cut you off, Faisal. I know you could talk about this forever, and you are in the mode of scaling, which is why I know you have a lot of energy around this. So you guys will get a lot more of this continued on podcasts. The last question is, how do I develop confidence if I'm a new coach and I'm lacking confidence?
I'll quote Rich Litvin, coach, and coach. It's like, and what I will add to that is be around a community of coaches, which, whether it's our community, coachingmasterycommunity.com, or another community, it doesn't matter where you go. You need to be around other coaches who are doing the same thing, who are sharing their perspectives, who are sharing their skill sets, who are helping you understand that there's several ways to approach a problem. There's several ways to approach something, because initially you're going to only come from your own perspective. And I've shared this a lot. Like when I'm in a coaching session, I'm not the only one who's showing up. There are 100 other coaches behind me. So my confidence is incredibly high, not just because of me, but because of the support that I have around me. And I felt that in a lot of the practices and skill sets and ways that I've implemented, I've learned from other coaches. Yeah. Like I don't have the ego to say I've figured out everything. I've figured out a couple of things, but most of them come from other amazing coaches that I've been around, and I've learned, oh shoot, I can try that, and I'll go implement it, and that changes it. The other part of confidence comes from the work that you do and how you live your life. That's, I think, so what I talked about before is the competence-confidence loop, is that we learn confidence by getting more competent in what we do. Yeah. By learning better skill sets and by getting practice and experience, but also learning from others. But then I think the deeper level of confidence really comes from us doing the work to live a more authentic life. Yeah. To live a life that feels more aligned with you. Because when you become more confident in who you are, then the context matters less, because you show up, I can learn this. I can take this on. It will take a little bit of time, but I can do this, because the confidence is in you, not in the context.
Yeah. I think one of the most powerful, from what you said, and we've talked about this before in the Coaching Mastery community, is the competence loop, which I think is so powerful, because we all can think about coaches, people that are marketing to us online who have all the confidence in the world. But the challenge is we have no idea what their level of competence is. And in fact, a lot of them have confidence that's unfounded. And we're not saying have unfounded confidence, which is basically, kind of narcissism. Like, I'm amazing, but I don't know what I'm actually going to be able to benefit with you, but you still should pay me. Like, that's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is coach, do more of the work, get more experience, and you're naturally going to get better, especially if you're working with other coaches, like in the CMC, where you're coaching a coach and they give you feedback. That will skyrocket your competence more than anything. And so do more of that. And as you get more competence, I feel like it's tongue twister, competence, your confidence will raise, and then competence, and then confidence, and then competence. Like, see, it's incremental, and it will come. So guys, I hope this, well, okay, let me pause. Faisal, do you have any last words? I know you do.
That was hilarious. Thank you. I appreciate you giving me last words. I think we covered most of it, and I really love your perspectives on it too, Dr. Sheri. I think we shared some incredibly profound things, but I want you guys to think about this and share some of your perspective and whether you're listening to it on YouTube or on our Facebook page. Share some of the perspectives that you've learned around these 5 questions. Share some of the questions that you might have that popped up, because more than likely it brought up more questions for you than answers. And that's a good thing. That's a learning journey. So share your questions that we can answer next time, or we will be able to answer within the post. Wherever you're hearing this, wherever you're listening to this, please share it with us, because this is how we learn as human beings. We share, we learn from perspectives.
And we have something exciting that we're doing. So the Coaching Mastery community is a community of coaches. Our Facebook group, which is private up to this point, has only been for our paying members who pay to be part of the community and contribute and get value. We are actually opening up the private Facebook group. It'll still be private, but we're opening it up to coaches to be able to be part of the Facebook group itself, which means they can see some of the trainings we do. They can interact, they can ask questions, they can get some support through the Facebook group. So we're opening that up free. We would love, if you're a coach that wants to, I know, we're crazy. So we would love for you guys to come to the Coaching Mastery community private Facebook group. Request to be let in. We've got 3 simple questions, I think 3 questions that to ask. This is just for coaches, so we're not going to take, and we really are, we're intentional about making sure that this stays a pure, supportive community of coaches. So, if there's anybody that ends up being like a marketer or trying to be sneaky and we'll kick them out in a hot minute. That's not what this is about. This is about you guys having a safe place to bring up these hard topics. So the Facebook community, come see us, request to join. We would love to see you there, and we can communicate there. And don't forget, send us your questions. Like Faisal said, it's not a black and white. We don't have the answers for everything. That's not why we're doing this podcast. We're doing the podcast to bring awareness to really important topics, questions, to have a conversation, to continue the conversation, and for you guys to be encouraged and supported in your journey, whatever that looks like for you as a coach.
Yes, and always remember that we don't know the answers to most things. We just know our own perspective and what we've learned from other amazing influencers and coaches in the industry that we are interacting with consistently. And also some of these questions we've actually gone deeper into some of the podcasts and full length. So make sure you check out those podcast episodes, go through the list. And you will find that we've gone in depth into some of these questions, especially around how to find your ideal clients. We did a whole series on that, and many of the other topics that we talked about that should be there. So definitely like and share this episode with any coach that you think will get value out of it. Make sure you subscribe to whatever channel you're on, whether it's a podcast platform or YouTube, so you get the notifications. And actually download our freebie that's on our page, thecoachesjourney.com. We'll have all the links in the show notes and the notes under this post for you to join our Facebook group, for you to go to the Coaches Journey podcast page where you'll find all our channels, and you'll find a freebie that will help you scale up. And you will get the link for our community page, thecoachingmasterycommunity.com, if you want to join us. Or when you're ready to join us, please go through that page. It'll explain what the community is about, and you'll have the opportunity to apply. We don't take everybody, but we do take coaches who are starting out and they're impact driven. That means they're there to serve, but also building a business that is sustainable, that helps them develop the kind of life that they really aspire to and inspire others in the process. So please let us know how we can support you. And until our next conversation next week, hope you have an incredible week.
Bye, guys.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.